Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm so delighted to see so many hearty folks. A surprisingly large crowd, given that it's Thanksgiving weekend and there's no heat in the room. But our theme this month is presence, and so we're doing a lot of things to reinforce that theme, including, I'm getting a funny echo here. I'll fix that in a second. The cold sharpens our senses. And we wanted to be sure that you all were really well aware that it is now December. And in all seriousness, this is a great bridge between the gratitude of Thanksgiving and into the season of giving. And our Giving Tree recipient this year is an organization, Purple Star Families, that supports folks who are experiencing food insecurity and homelessness. And this, I think, probably helps us be very mindful of what it must be like to be out on the streets at this time of year. So let me try and fix my audio echo issue for a second. It's echo. Okay, so if you all can't hear it, is it causing problems back there? All right, I'm going to not worry about it then. It's just echoing to me. So, of course, now it jumped to the end. Thank you. So, again, welcome to the Washington Ethical Society. I'm Karen Schofield-Leka. My pronouns are per and pers, short for person, and I am the officiant this morning. WES is one community unified across time and space, gathering for these Sunday platforms to affirm our values and commit to a better world. So I want to welcome you again, those of you who are here in the hall, those who are watching now on Zoom, and those who are catching the recording later. If you're on Zoom, please check the chat for a welcome and various tips from Trang Duong, today's Zoom chat usher. And if you're here in the hall and would like an assistive listening device, please ask the sound team at the back. A special welcome to our visitors today. We'd love to get to know you and answer any questions you have. And to get on our mailing list, you can fill out, as an email list, a connection form at tiny.cc/wesconnects, or send an email to wes@ethicalsociety.org. And if you're here in person, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after platform, or just chat up anyone with a printed name badge. And I want to let folks know there are some blankets at the back. Feel free to use them. They are from a house that has dogs and an angsty young adult, as Adam discovered in choosing the one with the skulls on it. But feel free to take a blanket or get up and dance around or walk back to the social hall. Do whatever you need to do to take good care of yourselves this morning. So now I'm going to check the Zoom chat and see who is with us remotely this morning. Let's see. So we have good mornings from Alex Abbott. Cynthia Goodman says, good morning, cold day, warm hearts. Michael Damian says, good morning. Mark Bayer says, good morning, Wesicles. Laura DeShulo grants everyone a happy December. And then Dimians said, good morning from the Dimians. We just got back from California, and it's kind of chilly here. And Lynn G also says a good morning. And let me see if I can't figure out why this is still making noise, even though it says it's muted. Okay. So, it keeps jumping to the end. It is good to connect and share this time together. Our opening words this morning are from Felix Adler's Religion of Duty. The members of the Ethical Society are bound by nothing but the acceptance of certain elementary moral truths and are united in the endeavor to add to these, believing that truth is progressive, and may be increased in the world, and that there is a duty to try and increase it. Our guest musicians this morning, U Street Jazz Collection, are certainly going to warm us up. There's no question about that. We are delighted to have them back again. And they've asked that I share some context or narrative about the pieces they're going to play this morning. And so today's opening song is It Don't Mean a Thing and If Ain't Got That Swing by Duke Ellington. Yep. So Ellington's timeless tune addresses the perennial question, what is jazz? At its core, Duke's philosophy suggests that jazz is defined not by its stylistic or theoretical elements, but by its spirit, what the jazz world calls that swing. A sophisticated and cultured man, Duke deliberately employed Black vernacular to highlight the origins of that swing, rooted in the creativity and resilience of North America's urban ghettos. Yet he also emphasized its universal appeal, resonating with anyone who approaches it with an open heart and receptive ears. All righty. Each week, we read our statement of purpose as a reminder of our shared values. And if you're interested in taking a turn to read the statement of purpose, you can sign up at tiny.cc/read-SOP. Today's reader is Lindsay Luke, a longtime WES member who now lives in Massachusetts but's visiting for the holiday. Hooray! You can just stand right there, turn on around.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm going to cry. The Washington Ethical Society is a humanistic congregation that affirms the worth of every person. We strive through our relationships to elicit the best in the human spirit. With faith in human goodness, boy, we need that now, don't we? We appreciate each person's unique capacities. We joyfully celebrate together and support each other through life. We nurture a sense of reverence and responsibility for each other and for the earth. We warmly invite you to join our community of children and adults as we work for a world where love and justice cross all borders.
Yeah. You can step over there. Thanks, Lindsay. As Lindsay lights our community candle, I invite you to join in the candle lighting words, which will have a special significance today. May we kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the light of understanding, and the fire of commitment to build a brighter future for all. Let us enter now into the centering time of our platform. Cecilia Ahern notes, sometimes we lose sight of ourselves when we're not paying enough attention. So let's pay attention. First, settle yourself into a position where your body can be at ease. Wiggle around, stretch, don't knock your neighbor. Take in a deep breath and then release it in a whoosh. So, whoosh. Take another deep breath and then we'll release it with a sigh. Now, keep breathing evenly. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Let your thoughts slow down a bit and consider. Charles Bukowski asks, can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? How close is that remembered self to the person you are now, day to day? Parker Palmer observes, I now know myself to be a person of weakness and strength, liability and giftedness, darkness and light. I now know that to be whole means to reject none of it, but to embrace all of it. What parts of your authentic self need to be embraced so that you can feel more whole? We continue our centering time in silence and in the music that follows.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oop, the tablet went to sleep. Well, I think what's supposed to come next is the reading, but since the tablet has gone to sleep, I don't have that handy. Bear with me 1 minute. We're going to do a quick switch of device. And you might chat amongst yourselves for a moment while I take care of this. Okay. Indeed, our reading this morning is excerpted from Rebecca Tausig's Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary, Resilient, Disabled Body. Crushing systems. So many of us grew up and continue to exist under crushing systems: racism, sexism, ageism, classism, homophobia, size discrimination. These structures are like factories pumping out blueprints, designs, infrastructures, tools, and stories that shape our world. They have been running for so long, shaping our cultural history and current landscape, that a lot of us don't even notice the billows of smoke jetting out of their industrial-sized stacks. They are fueled by the worth and power stolen from whole communities. They distort our sense of self, keep us quiet, and make us feel both small and like we are an enormous problem, both invisible and put on display, both a spectacle and swept under the rug. This act of thievery can be loud and violent, or quiet and sneaky. There are ways these oppressive systems overlap, feed off of each other, mirror one another, and there are also ways they remain uniquely distinct. Shame seems to be a best-selling product pumped out of all these crushing systems. Our platform speakers today are WES member Terry Smith and WES senior leader Casey Slack.
Hello. For the past 2 years, I've been reading ethics and about ethical culture, especially the first 2 or 3 decades of it. And I've shared a few of those ideas with KC, and they suggested perhaps we could do a platform on one of them. And that's why I'm standing here shivering in front of you today. Let me begin with this. When Felix Adler, on May 15th, 1876, gave the platform address that led to the creation of the New York Society for Ethical Culture, he didn't think of himself as starting a movement. He thought of himself as starting an organization that was part of a movement that already existed. And for 4 years, he was president of the Free Religious Association, but in 1882, he resigned out of frustration because there was a great deal of discussion of abstract philosophical and religious ideas, but not much action. And only then did he decide that he needed to start a movement. And the next 2 decades were the most creative years of his life. For Adler, the point of ethical culture was action. His motto was diversity in the creed, unity in the deed. But unity in the deed is possible only if there's agreement about ethical values. And this is where Adler made his most important innovation. He said it's possible for people of goodwill to acknowledge certain elementary moral truths without agreeing on abstract philosophical or religious principles. Here are a few examples of the kinds of elementary moral truths he talked about. We ought to lend a helping hand to the needy and oppressed. We ought to show gratitude to our benefactors. We ought to be faithful and loving parents and spouses. He thought moral truths such as these could serve as the bond that unites members of an ethical society to one another, making it possible for us to be united in action. But he also said, as the opening words quoted him saying, that moral truth is progressive and may be increased. So was he right? Are we bound together by a core set of moral truths, and have they grown? That is a bigger question than can be addressed in a single platform. But suppose we examine just one moral truth, one that is distinctive of the ethical movement and to which it has been deeply committed. Today we'll discuss a core moral truth that ethical culture embraced from day one. We call it authenticity. It is closely related to telling the truth, but authenticity applies to more than just what we say. It also applies to how we express ourselves and what we express. Even before he delivered the 1876 address that led to the creation of the New York Society for Ethical Culture, Adler decided, based on authenticity, that this first gathering would have no prayer or worship. Why not? Because prayer and worship imply a belief in a personal God who hears prayers and is pleased by worship. But Adler found he could no longer believe in a personal God. And of course, I agree with him, except when I go to a gospel concert. I actually believe in Jesus for the entire length of the concert, but that's a personal weakness on my part, so please just ignore that. So this decision set ethical culture apart from other groups in the Free Religious Association because they often continued to perform actions which looked and felt like prayer and worship, even though they didn't believe in a personal God. Ethical culture did not. This is why it has always been a natural home for humanists. Authenticity is not an aesthetic stance, it's an ethical one. We should not misrepresent what we believe. Now, what about progress in moral truth? I'm old. How old? I knew Adler before he even had a beard. I knew him before he could even grow a beard. So that's how old I am. So, have we discovered any new moral truths during my lifetime? And I can say without hesitation that there have been profound discoveries in the domain of sexuality. Marriage is no longer limited to a man and a woman. Gender is no longer defined biologically. How did these moral discoveries take place? I believe they were the result of progress in our concept of authenticity. In the 1960s, I had a close personal friend who was gay. And in the 1970s in graduate school, I had another close personal friend who was gay. I'm not sure how much drama and emotion is associated with coming out nowadays, but I can say back then it was a big deal. It was emotionally risky. There was no way to do it without making yourself very vulnerable. No one takes a large risk for small reasons. They came out because they felt they had to. They couldn't keep pretending to be someone they were not. They thought I should know who they really were, which was a powerful act of trust that cemented our friendships, and they both remain close friends. In my opinion, my friends were acting out of a sense of obligation to be authentic, not just in the original sense of not misrepresenting what they truly believe, but in an expanded sense of not misrepresenting who they really are. I believe that authenticity in this expanded sense has led to the discovery of new moral truths in the domain of sexuality. It seems to me these truths are grounded in the oldest and most distinctive principle of the ethical movement. But I can only speak from my experience of my generation and as a friend of the LGBTQ movement. For a contemporary perspective of a participant, I hand the microphone to Casey.
Thank you so much, Terry. Authenticity is one of my core personal values. One of the things that I've been living since before I started phrasing the things about my life in the context of my values and my practices. There's a cartoon that was really popular in the 90s. It's called Daria. How many of us are familiar with Daria? Okay, yeah, Gen X, millennials, show out. Wonderful. So Daria is fundamentally a cartoon about a really disaffected suburban teenager in the 1990s. She is sarcastic to actually a fault. She does not believe in people, and the whole ethos of her world is that if you're being authentic, you're probably about to get bullied. But at one point, she and her best friend, Jane, sit in a movie theater next to each other, and the statement is, I don't want to pick a career as a teenager, so I don't wake up at 40 years old not sure whose life I'm living. That caught me early on. There was pressure in my life to pick a career, to decide who I was going to be when I was quite young. In fact, when I was 3 years old, my parents bought me a little play doctor kit and told me that I wanted to be a doctor, a thing I believed until I was 17 years old. I got to college and I started taking pre-med classes, and the classes were one thing, but in a specific course I took, we had to go interview someone who had the job we thought we wanted. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician or a pediatric psychiatrist. So I went and I talked to a couple people with those jobs. Not the jobs I actually wanted. The pediatrician spent too much time not seeing patients, and the psychiatrist seemed so sad. And I was already pretty sad myself, so I thought, maybe not. I was wrong about which things I didn't want in those careers, though. My first move was to switch from being a pre-med major to being a biochemistry major. That didn't last very long. As it turns out, part of my authentic experience of the universe is that if somebody says you imagine that molecule and you just pick it up in your head and turn it around, I very much do not. However, I could write an essay with very little issue. The point isn't my career trajectory. The point is that listening to myself told me something about where I needed to go next. It was just a little bit of information. It wasn't like a clear, blinding light that said, nope, this direction. It was just a little flickery red light that said, nope, not there. I learned that from my grandmother that my parents had told me I wanted to be a doctor because their goal was to have a child who was a kind of professional that had a different sort of class status than them as factory managers. A doctor, a lawyer, I guess a clergy person worked. We did okay. Some of the point of telling you that story is to mention that authenticity is a moving target. That my authentic self at 17 and my authentic self at 36 are pretty different people. That I expect my authentic self at 46 will be yet another person, And that at 56 and 66 and 76, and should I get there, 86, those will all be different but still true versions of myself. There's a tendency to think of authenticity or of coming out as telling the absolute truth about yourself. That you must know, with a capital K, who you are and which words are yours, and be right about it the first time. We wind up in some complicated situations when we expect people to tell us who they are and then never change. In the context of what language I use about myself, that has moved around, as much as more than my career trajectory. I realized that I was queer when I was about 14 years old, when somebody said the word bisexual to me for the first time. I was in my best friend's kitchen, and she was making posters to hang on her classmates' lockers, and she said, "This one's for Barbara Joy. She's bisexual." And I said, "You could be that?" Hold on, what? I had simply never heard the word before, and when I did, I knew it applied to me. And for a while, that was it. That was the word. I was bisexual. And then I learned the word pansexual, and I thought, maybe that? Then eventually I kind of gave up on words altogether, started just calling myself queer and figuring if you cared, you could figure it out. And if it mattered, well, you knew. And then new questions, right? I settled in to an identity for my sexuality, and then, oh no, I thought myself clean out of gender. Started thinking about what does it mean to be a woman, and I realized that more and more for me, it didn't mean anything at all. That there was no relationship between my physical body and that word that meant that they had to go together, and that I actually liked it better when they didn't. So authenticity is a moving target. The labels you put on yourself are a moving target. You don't have to find the perfect words. I'll give you another example from my life. How I identify religiously or theologically has moved around quite a lot in the course of my life. Around the same time that I realized that I was bisexual, I also realized that, unlike most of my classmates, I didn't really believe in God. I grew up in a world where there were 17 churches in my town of 8,000 people. What did we need all of those for? 16 Protestant churches, 1 Catholic church, nothing else. Most of my friends and relatives who were religious, which was most of them, were evangelicals. They had really strong and clear beliefs about who and what God was, and I didn't particularly share those. I tried really, really hard. It is very difficult to be told from all angles that there is capital T truth that you could have access to if you would just stop asking so many damn questions. I got coercively saved at a Pentecostal church one night at a youth lock-in, which was just supposed to be a fun thing I went to with my friends. But instead, while I was locked in the building in the middle of the night, a youth minister who may or may not have any credentials gave a fire and brimstone sermon to a bunch of young teenagers, in which he said repeatedly, "If you died tonight, would you ever see your parents again?" I did not know, but he promised me that if I repeated some words that he said, then I could know. I was 14, was not emotionally able to handle this, so I went up to the front of the sanctuary and I repeated the words back to him, and I felt better, but mostly because he wasn't yelling at me anymore. And as the service closed and I walked away with my friends, I'm like, okay, well, this is me now. I believe in Jesus now. I'm trying to convince myself of this. When my friend says, Oh, I just can't wait until you start speaking in tongues. And that was too far for me. I called my father and I went home. Spent a lot of time trying to find the words after that for what I actually was. I called myself an agnostic theist for a time because of the Pascal's wager of it all, right? If I just say that maybe I believe, then maybe God will be happy enough with that and I'll be okay. It didn't feel particularly true, though. What felt most true was that people needed to be able to know each other. That whatever we believed about how the universe functions, whether there was or wasn't a God, there sure were other people. That we could be in community with each other and treat each other well, build something better than the world we were given, without needing the threat of punishment at the end or the promise of perfection. That we could build something new and different without needing to think that there was something perfect in the past that we should get back to. Eventually, I actually came to find that backward-looking, a perfect thing before that we need to get back to be really dangerous. To allow people to fantasize about history in ways that do not reflect what most people's experience of history was. This too is authenticity, actually, right? Being honest with yourself about what you believe and about the effects of what you believe. I think that we are responsible for the things we choose to believe and the way we choose to behave out of that belief. Authenticity needs balanced by other values and rounded out in the context of community. You cannot be an asshole to people just because it feels authentic to you to behave like an asshole. Or, I mean, you can, but I don't value that. Some of us are naturally, authentically, a little abrasive, a little intense. I am naturally a little intense. You pointed at someone who deserves it, not just everybody around you. You take the anger and irritation that you feel, which are real, actual feelings that you get to honor. And you find something to do with it that moves the world the direction you want, rather than just pushing your feelings out of you and into whoever is around to absorb them. Your authentic self and your unhealed self are not the same person. There was a quote in Karen's centering reflection about who you were before you were hurt. I like that idea, but I'm not sure that who you were before is who matters. I think who matters is who you're going to be. Who you choose to be right now, how you choose to be on a path that is about healing that stuff that made you reactive, right? About finding a way to be centered enough in yourself that you make choices on purpose, that you behave because you mean to. As often as possible, nobody can actually do it all the time, right? You will make a mistake. You will yell at someone you love because there are just slightly too many noises in the room, and you are a little overstimulated. You will fail to show up because you are too tired, because the world hurts you all the time. That's okay. Your authentic self is the one that gets back up. Your authentic self is not the one that, well, your authentic self makes the mistake, but your authentic self and your more favorite self, your next self, your more healed self, is the one that gets back up. That figures out how to say that you're sorry. that figures out how to get back in the conversation when you had to move away to protect yourself. I think about authenticity in the context of ethical culture as very closely linked with the idea of eliciting the best. We talk about eliciting the best in each other and thereby ourselves, or in ourselves and thereby each other. And these are both directions in which we can increase each other and our own in authenticity. But how? How do we encourage and support the authentic in one another? We make it easy to express individuality. We don't have a dress code, right? You are not required to come here in any particular style of dress, and you get to enjoy aesthetically whatever it is that you enjoy. I like to look like this. I do not like to wear khaki-colored pants or chinos. John Dakin likes to wear chinos, and that is John Dakin's authentic self, and thus wonderful. We don't have to be the same to see that when you get to present yourself as you like, then you get to show up for real. We get to see how amazing it is that there are 50 people in this room, and each of you is different from the one next to you, even if you are on the surface very alike. We can understand each person as the authority on their own experience. Nobody but you has been living your life. Nobody but you knows what it's like on the inside. You are the ultimate authority on your experience of the world. And nobody else is. Nobody else is the authority over you, and you are the authority over nobody else. You can believe people when they tell you how they feel, when they say what their gender is, what their sexuality is, when they tell you what kind of accommodations their disability that you maybe cannot see requires, when they tell you what their physical body can and can't do, when they tell you what hurts their feelings, even if maybe it wouldn't hurt yours. We can approach differences with curiosity, but not spectacle. The difference between curiosity and spectacle can be fine, because curiosity might come out with a little bit too much enthusiasm, as, wow, how do you do that? It's not always the most welcoming or affirming way to interact with a person. Nobody, no matter how spectacular or loudly dressed they often are, actually likes to be treated like a novelty at all times. But curiosity can say, oh, I really love those earrings. Can you tell me about them? Or, you shared such an interesting poem today. Can you tell me about that? Or, I really love how I can hear you laugh during platform. I'd like to get to know you better, right? You can approach each other's presentation and presence with curiosity. You can say, even though I wouldn't start here, it's interesting to me that you describe your gender this way when I see this thing. Wait until you know someone to ask that question. Do not begin your conversations that way. But if you have known a trans person for some amount of time and you want to know how they think about their gender, it's a reasonable question to ask someone you have a relationship with. Unlock this again. We can also learn to give and receive meaningful feedback. That is not hard criticism. As it happens, very few people you will encounter in your day-to-day need your brutal honesty. We are all present to plenty of brutality. Let's not add it to each other's lives. However, it is useful to be able to say, I feel blank when blank. So for example, I am habitually late. I have really bad ADHD and I only understand how to be extremely on time or 5-10 minutes behind. This leads to me being a kind of complicated person to do collaborative work with. I know. And so I have been able to accept feedback in which people say, hey, it is hard for me to do my tasks when you do not do your tasks. I can actually cause my brain to understand time when it means helping other people have an easier time. I'm not perfect at it, but I try. For example, I have turned in all of my board reports on time this program year, which is a big deal for me. You can learn to say to people, hey, ow, that thing you said hurt. You can learn to receive someone saying, hey, ow, that thing you said hurt. And you can receive that with curiosity, with care, rather than with defensiveness. You can say to yourself, sometimes is necessary, it's okay that I'm not perfect. It's okay that I messed up. This person cares enough about our relationship to want to invite me back into it. Somebody offering you a correction is somebody who is offering you the opportunity to stay in relationship. We can also encourage creative expression in children and in adults. We're doing a pretty good job of that here. But we can focus some of our work in Seek on developing the creative capacity of our children. And we can spend time together really taking seriously art in all of its forms, right? Art that is physical and visual, art that is sonic, art that is presentational, art that is something you keep on the ends of your fingers because it helps you get through the day. We can take seriously creativity. And the more we take creativity seriously, the more each of us has language in which to express ourselves. Sometimes the things that are truest about yourself don't come to you in words first. Sometimes they appear in colors and shapes or sounds. If you speak saxophone, for example, you might be able to communicate things about yourself, about what it feels like to be you, better in saxophone than you can in English. I can express the truth about my gender in splashes of paint better than I can in words. I'm going to guess that each of you has something that you can express better in your creativity, whether it's creativity that is still English language, that is poem or academic essay. I think those are creative too. That counts for me. Whether it is in paint or collage or song, it doesn't even have to be something you came up with. There might be something you sing that resonates inside of you in a way that says, this is true for me. And the more we can speak in these languages, the more we can hear each other in these different languages, the more we can know each other and be present with the fullness of one another's personhood. I'm going to speed up a little bit because it's too cold for me to talk for that long. We can work against high control hierarchical systems. In a time of rising authoritarianism and fascism, there is something so truly, deeply subversive about saying, you know what? I'm going to choose to be myself and see other people as whole people as often as possible. These high control, hierarchical systems, they tell us that there's a right way to be, right? Up here at the top of the pyramid is the person who is correct, right? Or the type of person who is correct. And that the further down you go, the less correct a person is. Or that there is a center to the circle, which is the correct way to be a man, a woman, nothing else. That is the correct way to be an elder or a young person, the correct way to be a parent. And that there is only one way to do it. And that is a lie. It's a really compelling lie because the problem with authenticity is that it requires vulnerability. It is really easy and safe feeling if somebody says, this is who to be, and you can say, okay. It feels much less safe to step out into the space of who you actually are. So some of what we can do is work against those systems in ourselves, in our community, and in our world. We can listen to one another. We can encounter and collaborate with one another as equals. I've talked before about the way that jazz influences my thinking, the way that jazz, through hip hop actually, influences my thinking. In part, that it is hard to collaborate with someone if you don't see them as an equal. It is difficult to really jam with someone if you can't enjoy their rhythms too. When we encounter and collaborate with one another as equals, we come up with something that is bigger and weirder and cooler than what any of us could do on our own. And we get the opportunity not only to hear each other, but to hear each other enmeshed, right? Crossing in and out of one another, making that new thing. We can work to that in ourselves by spending time with ourselves, by making sure that there are quiet moments where you can hear yourself think. That's hard sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to hear what I have to think. Sometimes I want to dump other people's sounds into my brain constantly so I don't have to think about what's going on in here. But you gotta. It is unfortunate, but it is true. And in fact, it is actually quite fortunate that you have the ability to sit with yourself and hear and feel and digest what it means to be you. In those spaces, we can seek to understand and make peace with our emotions, our feelings, which are a type of fact, not the only facts available, but a type, an important type, which tell us when something is wrong or when something is right. Right? We can take our experiences of feeling angry and say, I might not enjoy feeling angry. I don't actually particularly enjoy feeling angry, though I do feel angry a lot. And say, that is a sign that something is wrong. That is my emotional self saying, alert, 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 bad. If you digest the anger just a little bit, let it stop being the loudest thing in your head. Sometimes you can take that anger, you can take that energy, and you can push it around and turn it into something that helps remedy that system. Right? You can take your anger and turn it into power. It's fire. It works all kinds of ways. It can burn down your village, yes, but it can also run an engine. We can try things that we don't expect to be good at. That one's really hard. I have a really hard time, historically, doing things that I'm not immediately kind of great at. I am the sort of person who is naturally pretty good at a whole bunch of stuff. It has been really easy in my life to just focus on the things that I'm already good at. But there is something really freeing in sitting down to do something that you expect to fail at, where there are no consequences. One of my favorite things to do is buy art supplies that I don't know how to use, and then take on no instructions about how to use them. And simply do what I do, and probably do it like horribly wrong the first time. It is so freeing to do art without expecting it to be good, without it being for anyone else, without it having a point other than I'm gonna play with this. There's no real risk of failure. Usually I have spent at most $8. Finding things you can try where there is very little risk of what happens when you fail, things you don't expect to be good at, but it won't really matter if you're not. It tells you a lot about yourself. It helps heal some of that perfectionism that we all internalize, because if it was fine that you messed up at this, then it might actually be okay if you messed up at something a little more important. You might actually have better internal responses to finding out that you messed up on something you care about, if you have been practicing what it's like to mess up on something with no consequences. And the last way that I want to suggest that we can meet the authentic in ourselves is by exploring our aesthetic possibilities. Buy a piece of clothing that you think is a little outside of the range of what you would usually wear. Maybe buy like a necklace or a button that's a little more bold than you usually go. See what it's like to just pick up things that you like and not worry about if it's the right thing or what other people will like. I'm not suggesting that you will all arrive at like brightly colored personal aesthetics. Please don't. I'm saying that there's not actually rules, right? Now, your office might have some rules, that's a different situation, but the world doesn't actually have a lot of rules about what you're allowed to wear. Put on a skirt if that seems like it might be interesting. Or like, don't if it really feels like it wouldn't be. Let yourself present in ways that feel good to you. Worry first about if it feels like you. Sometimes you is a person who wears all black at all times, and that is a wonderful somebody to be. And sometimes you loves khaki pants and a button-up. Sometimes you wears a lot of polos. And you, across the course of your life, will dress a bunch of different ways. You will like a bunch of different styles of art and a bunch of different styles of music, but just because you didn't like something before or don't know if you would like something doesn't mean that you can't try it. Pick up an album in a genre of music you don't think you like. Ask a friend who has different taste in music than you to recommend something outside of your usual purview. Go to a museum that has the kind of art you don't think you like in it. For me, that requires me to go somewhere where there is photorealistic representational art. Do not like that. And yet, I recently went to the portrait gallery and found myself pretty enamored of the artistry and the work and the creativity that is bringing someone's person to life in a portrait. Stretch yourself a little bit. And come back next week. So we're going to talk about art more next week. And I have some ideas of things you might want to see. So much of our potential as individuals and as a movement is in our ability to say to people Who you are is good. To let people come in and change us. We have the opportunity, though the cost of the opportunity I am not certain I would have taken on in other circumstances. We have the opportunity to do something that makes people more alive. Authoritarianism and fascism kill people, but first by killing their spirits. First by killing their sense of self, their sense of belonging. We have the ability to answer that with aliveness, with yes, with belief, deep, sincere, strongly held ethical belief that each person's authenticity matters. And that when we bring who we are for real together, the sum of that whole is so, so much bigger than its parts. Thank you for braving the cold to be here with us today.
So thank you so much to Terry and to KC for sharing those great thoughts. In a few minutes, we'll have our community sharing time when you can write into the chat or share in person about what resonated with you in this platform. While we listen to today's musical response, you might prepare by reflecting on a personal experience or an activity here at WES that the platform brings to mind. Please distill your thoughts to a single idea that you can share in 1 to 2 minutes. And if you have many thoughts, please save those for after platform when you're encouraged to find someone you don't already know really well, maybe even somebody you don't know at all, and strike up a conversation about what authenticity might mean for you. So our musical response this morning is Compared to What by Les McCann. In the later stages of the 60s and 70s quest for authenticity, real became a term so overused that it either lost its meaning entirely, becoming whatever anyone wanted it to be, or became tied to an unyielding absolutism. Here, Les challenges the culture, reminding us that real is always relative to something, but to what? You all can come speak saxophone to us anytime. And all, yep, indeed, piano, bass, and drums too. So this is the time when we add our own voices to the morning, sharing our reflections on the platform or what resonates with our personal experience. For our online participants, I invite you to share in the Zoom chat or in the comments if you are watching the recording later. And I'll just note that because I just had to change devices, if you wrote something into the chat before the music started, I can't see it, so you're gonna have to repost it, please. If you're here in the hall and would like to share a brief comment, 1 to 2 minutes, you can come up now and form a line here on the ramp. When it's your turn at the microphone, please begin with your name and pronouns. And when you're finished, if you're able, please use the stairs to return to your seat, and the next person on the ramp can come on up. So, anyone have something that they would like to share in words or other ways of expressing yourself? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Karen Sheeher, and I also really love the idea of authenticity. I was a philosophy major in college, and that was the thing that really like stuck with me, I think, of all the things. And so when Casey was talking about what is authentic about you, and then having the U Street Jazz Collective here, I kept thinking, one thing that has been with me, I think, my entire life is my love of music. My mom, I read once in a baby book that my mom had for me that apparently in my high chair, I used to make up songs. So I just wanted to thank the U Street Jazz Collective for coming here today, because as I was sitting there in my chair, anytime you guys were playing, I don't know if I just forgot I was cold or it made my heart beat faster. And so I warmed up. So thank you all for coming here today. Thank you for coming on this cold day and warming us up.
Hi, I'm Bill, he and him, and I really appreciated this discussion about authenticity. It's one of those concepts that I just couldn't quite connect the dots to, and particularly to ethical culture. And I felt like oh yes, that's the reason why we run Sunday school the way we do, and our children develop in ways that they develop their own sense of identity and ethics, and should reflect that authenticity. And I even looked at my own past, and I think, oh yeah, when I started to acknowledge being gay as a teenager in the early 70s, it just opened up. Well, it's what led me out of religion and caused me to look at all other kinds of things, because I was being authentic and I was allowed to be authentic at that time. But so there's another part I want to have, and it comes back to the idea that authenticity isn't just predetermined, but is partially constructed, and we become something of what we're raised to be, and options and way we think about ourselves. So the question I have is, I think about the Trump and bigots that have found their authentic selves acknowledged and reinforced, and so I want some discussion about how we deal with these authentic people. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peggy Lower, yeah. I'm Peggy Blair. It's my first time. And part of my authenticity is I speak out. So as you can see, I'm not afraid of speaking out. My husband passed last year, and I'm kind of trying to find a new sense of belonging. I think that, when I was a couple, I was coupled off, and now all of a sudden I feel the need for something bigger. I've been reading books on Stoicism, and my husband was a true Stoic, and I'm trying to be more like him now. One of the things I'm finding with Stoicism is you're not supposed to really feel anger, or you're supposed to channel it, which was just what Casey was saying. So I could really relate to that. I don't have too much of an anger problem, but one of my very best friends does. And I'm having trouble coping with that, including that she insists on being the driver when we're together. And the language that she speaks, and she says, they can't hear me, but it's like, but I can hear you. And the foul language, I'm not so prim and proper, but it's just her anger at other drivers is spilling over into me. And when I tell her that it's bothering me, she says, oh, this is how I express myself. It makes me feel good. I'm like, yeah, but it's bothering me. Kind of what Casey was saying again, too, that anger just is contagious. It just spreads. And so, that's something that really resonated with me. And I'm trying to figure out how to deal with one of my very closest friends who has so much anger in her. And I just, don't know how to deal with it when I'm trying to eliminate that emotion in myself.
Not wearing khakis today.
Yeah, I stretched a little bit today. I'm John, he, him. It occurs to me I'm a little bit of the reverse of KC, that I am a psychiatrist who looked into being clergy, and it did not work for me. One of the joys of being a psychotherapist is that in working with people for months and sometimes years, I get to help them be their next best self, one of Casey's wonderful sayings. And a lot of that I've found over my years of doing this work is helping them find their authenticity. And I just loved having that theme centered in this platform today. And I find that one of two things seems to happen among people who come to me for psychotherapy, which is either they really don't know themselves and they need help to find who they really are, or sometimes worse, people who kind of know, but they don't like who they are. Others have taught them not to. And it's such a joy to help them push away the naysayer inside and embrace their full selves. And along the way, I've gotten to learn so much. And I've stretched as a person as a result of encountering the authenticity in my clients.
Yes, hello everybody. Jeff here. I'm not sure if I can cap it at 1 to 2 thoughts, but try not to violate the 2-minute warning. First, I really appreciate, by the way, I'm not wearing a jacket and coat. I'm very used to temperatures like this because our furnace at home has been on the fritz for the past week and a half. There's supposed to be a part on order. I'll believe it when I see it. Secondly, I really appreciated the U Street Jazz Collective. I love the Ellington. The original Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, I think was recorded a little over 90 years ago. It's one of my favorite recordings. 2 other things. One, Casey, when you said about the number of churches in Streetsboro, I have this theory about small towns in the Midwest and out on the plains, that the number of churches is approximately equal to the number of bars, taverns, and liquor stores combined. It was true in Waseca, Minnesota, so I think it's possibly true there too. But as far as authenticity goes, I just can't help getting away from the advice given by Polonius to Hamlet in that eponymous play. This above all else to thine own self be true.
Okay, I'm good. I'm going to leave the mask on because I can't. Got to get disentangled here. Eric Moyer, they, them, and authenticity is a hard concept for me to really get my hands on because I don't see the self as unitary across time or even in a particular time period. So if right now this is part of the reason why I like they, them pronouns is because it is both singular and plural. And if I look carefully at myself, there is not just one thing, one set of desires, one set of thoughts. There's a bubbling mess of thoughts and desires and opinions and feelings and perceptions that it's hard to say that's one thing. And then to say that should have one expression. It's going to have one expression just because there's only one body here to do things with. But it really is a struggle for me to say that, okay, to your own self to be true, to which one? So.
Hi, Shirley Storm, she, her. Okay. I was reading articles, about how we're adjusting to reality these days. And there was a phrase in one of them that has rattled around in my brain all week. And it was the incredible self-validation of hatred. That feels so good and is so easy. And that today what struck me is what you're talking about, Casey, is so much harder. But anyway, I just wanted to share that phrase with you because it just blew my mind.
Abby, she, her. So many thoughts. However, the one I'll share is about authenticity in a non-denominational religious community, ethical culture and UUA are very similar in many ways, but one difference in practice, if not on paper, is that ethical culturists tend to have a fairly uniform set of beliefs, not necessarily beliefs of what you should do with that, but a fairly uniform set of beliefs, which are humanist. And I have heard from UUA folks, I'm less familiar with the UUA, but I have heard the phrase, Lynn Cox, our interim, used it, sing one another's hymns. In other words, support each other's religious expression. So and then there's also the question of appropriation. If you are singing a hymn that belongs not to your faith, and you're obviously, you can be authentic about doing that, about celebrating that. But then where's the line between that and appropriation? So I have no answers. I only have questions. And I think it's a critical issue for ethical culture because we do get caught up by people's sensitivities to certain kinds of words or phrases or ways of thinking. And if we could genuinely celebrate whatever works for each other, I think we would be more able to act as one.
Thanks all who shared in person. I'm going to check the chat now. Laura DeSchuler says, good question, Bill. So hearkening back to how do we deal with authentic selves that we might find a little less pleasing to have to encounter. Michael Dimian says, Bill, the WES-based philosophy discussion group will be discussing these topics today at 1 p.m. on Zoom and provided a link, which is also available in email. Judio says, I'm reminded of the strategy of parenting of allowing kids to practice falling on their face while they're still close to the ground so they can be better at it when the stakes are much higher. And Roberta Geyer adds, thanks for today's platform. I appreciated you were exploring new things and ideas. It's also important to have the courage to fail. It's in this process we learn who we are and new ways of being and becoming. So thanks to all who shared your thoughts and attention. And just as we share our perspectives in this community, so too do we share our resources and gifts. Here at WES, we split undesignated gifts in the Sunday collection between our operating budget and a fund dedicated to justice and compassion. And throughout the month of December, we will be sharing with East of the River Mutual Aid, which provides groceries, produce, and basic household essentials to neighbors across Wards 7 and 8 here in the district. Mutual aid is about more than providing material support, however. It's also about building networks of care and resilience that empower individuals and strengthen our collective foundation. In a world that often feels overwhelming, acts of mutual aid remind us of the power we hold when we come together to meet each other's needs. And so, as the temperatures drop, too many of our neighbors are bracing for the cold without the essential protection of a warm coat, let alone a place to live, perhaps. A warm coat is not just clothing. It's a symbol of community, a reflection of self-determination, and a way to say, we see you and we've got you. So this winter, the group is aiming to raise $8,000 to purchase and distribute high-quality warm coats to individuals and families in our community who should not struggle to stay warm. By participating in this fundraiser, you're helping to create a cycle of care that turns despair into hope, helplessness into action, and isolation into connection. Your support can transform uncertainty and vulnerability into a powerful expression of solidarity and care. This is the essence of community care, a force that not only helps us survive the cold, but is also able to face whatever challenges the future holds. So let's all take a moment to prepare to respond to the invitation to generosity as we are able. To donate online through the Breeze system, go to tiny.cc/westgives. Text a dollar amount to the number up on the screen, 771-333-8513, or click on Give on our website, ethicalsociety.org. Or to donate in person today, just place cash or check in the basket at the back of the hall on your way out, and you can always send a check by mail. I'm going to thank you for your generosity and receive your gifts and the gift of music. The next song is Cernaux's Devoid of Funk by Parliament Funkadelic. This song was part of Funkadelic canon, whereby George Clinton characterized the late 70s disco scene as superficial and lacking authenticity. Cernaux's Devoid of Funk was the personification of this disco scene. No longer was disco the underground music of Black, Latin, and gay Bronx underground. When this music went to Midtown, in Studio 54, for example, it became a scene where people went to be seen rather than to groove to music. How's that, gentlemen? So I want to mention a few opportunities to engage in the life of our community, and there's a lot happening this week, so bear with me. I'm going to try and kind of speed through it. But if you're interested in learning more about membership at WES, we have a Path to Membership class with Casey today at 12:30 in the library, which is kind of across the lobby. This year's Giving Tree will benefit those served by the Purple Stars Foundation, which focuses on local folks experiencing food insecurity or homelessness. I'm not sure that the tree is set up today, but you can contact Genevieve with questions, and there was a link in the email news and notes that you can find there. The West Sunday Cafe needs to get better pricing on larger quantities of coffee and shelf-stable milk. And by contributing funds generously to our coffee coffers, you can donate via cash in the tip jars online at tiny.cc/West Coffee signup, or there's a QR code on the table. Next Sunday, Senior Leader Casey Slack will speak on art and humanism with curated music videos. Our visibility garden planting will begin with help from Chesapeake natives on December 4th, starting at noon. Hot cocoa and snacks will also be provided along with some stellar company. Next, I'm going to lay out a bunch of activities this week that require pre-registration, so please sign up at the links provided via the news and notes email. Today at 1, the West Philosophy Group will meet on Zoom to discuss the 2024 U.S. election, aftermath, and the future of America. On Tuesday, December 3rd at 7, you're invited to a death cafe led by Senior Leader Casey Slack to talk about death and dying in a safe, judgment-free space. And if you have questions, you can contact Trang Duong, who's also in the back of the hall this morning. To increase comfort in using consent decision-making at WES and other places, the Lay Leadership Development Committee is offering a workshop on dynamic governance on December 5th at 7:30 via Zoom. The DC Labor Chorus invites WES Friends to a free holiday concert featuring music drawn from diverse traditions, from classics to new parodies to seasonal favorites with a social justice twist. The concert will be held in person here at WES on Saturday, December 7th, starting at 7, and will also be live streamed. Tickets are free, but you must pre-register. You can learn how to save a life. WES member Trang Duong will be leading a free Heart Saver CPR AED training, 6:30 to 9 on Tuesday, December 10th. So the 10th, not the 3rd, as was originally posted. Training is at the Dennis Avenue Health Center, just a few miles up George Avenue. Class size is limited to 6 students, so please contact Trang if you have questions and be sure to sign up. And Sue Smith is here and is going to share the WES Board update for the month.
It's brief. First, a little auction news for those of you who aren't aware. I'm really excited to report that the auction was well-attended, high-spirited, and raised over $21,000 for WES. Okay. And the board is grateful to the auction team and especially Emily Newman for organizing such a successful event. And next up, I want to make you aware of a special membership meeting that will be Monday night, December 16th, on Zoom in the evening from 7 to 8:30. At the fall membership meeting, there was a motion made that WES adopt the position that the Ethical Society of St. Louis Task Force has that led to a need for further information and a forum to discuss that, a dedicated forum to discuss that. And this meeting will be held to provide that forum to better understand the task force's position, to discuss WES's own options, and to decide on an official response. The meeting announcement and materials went out November 22nd, so check your email. The conversation will inform next steps related to WES's relationship with the AEU, and we hope that you'll be able to attend. Just as an aside, the town hall that was originally scheduled for the end of October and then postponed has been, we decided not to have it because we've got enough meetings going on right now. But know that if you have anything you'd like to communicate to the board that is still available, you can write to the Board of Trustees at email to board@ethicalsociety.org or you could attend a board meeting if you have something you want to communicate. Upcoming events include, as part of the board's work with Casey on this year's visioning exercise, some trustees will be leading or helping lead some of the upcoming events that will give WES members a chance to share thoughts and feelings about WES and its future. On December 15th, Julie Grimes, assisted by Perry Bider, will lead Visioning Through Music, and on January 12th, I, Sue Smith, will lead Visioning Through Storytelling. Please watch for details on these and other visioning events. And then I have some administrative improvements that the board has been involved in. Names of committee members will now be on our website very shortly. Some are already there. Personnel committee has been reconstituted, and finances are being carefully monitored and are proceeding better than budgeted.
And now another auction update.
So in last year's auction, one of the items included was the Holiday Tastes and Tunes Party, which had to be rescheduled due to COVID. It will now be next Saturday, competing with the event here by the DC Labor Chorus, but we will have food by Christine Parcelli and Shirley Storms and others, so there is that. If you'd like to hear some songs not quite right for Winterfest, well, you're in luck. Our party can now take a few more guests. Love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too. Our Tastes and Tunes event will be a wonderful affair, and we hope you can join us there. It will be at the home of Jen Watson and Bridget Monahan, 7 o'clock next Saturday. Cost is $40. If you would like to sign up for that, please talk with Karen Schofield-Lecca. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for our announcements today. As always, you can find information about opportunities to connect in the weekly news and notes email and on the calendar page of WES's website, ethicalsociety.org. I want to say thank you so much to the many folks who helped create this morning's time together. Today's platform speakers, Terry Smith and Casey Slag, and our guest musicians, the UC Jazz Collective. Woo-hoo! Thanks also to staff members Indara Miles, Robin Kravitz, and Maceo Thomas, and of course, our platform production volunteers, the tech team members, slide artists, Zoom chat usher, in-person greeters, the caffeinator crew, and our many Seek teachers. If you are new to our community, please introduce yourself in person or via the connection form at tiny.cc/wesconnects or an email to wes@ethicalsociety.org. At the conclusion of the platform, please join us for social hour, either here or on Zoom at tiny.cc/Wes Coffee Hour. You're encouraged to find someone you don't already know really well, maybe even someone you don't know at all yet, and strike up a conversation about what authenticity means to you. And now we're going to enjoy our closing music. Thank you for being myself again. This song by Sly and the Family Stone captures the essence of embracing the freedom to simply be oneself. The group was groundbreaking in many ways, embodying the late 60s and early 70s quest for authenticity and individuality. Sly was among the first Black artists to adopt the San Francisco hippie aesthetic, blending it with a diverse, multiracial lineup that defied the norms of the time. Notably, the band featured a female trumpet player, an uncommon sight in an era when women in music were often confined to singing roles. This bold authenticity, both musically and socially, cemented Sly and the Family Stone as pioneers in breaking barriers and celebrating individuality. Thank you again. And now for our closing words. Let us go into the week ahead with compassion, understanding, and commitment, welcoming the stranger and being fully present in all our encounters. Thank you all for joining today's platform, especially braving the cold in person or joining us remotely, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.